Hey, good morning. Okay, really short video really. I wanted to talk about in order to help people with their driving tests, part 2 and part 3, etc. And for that matter, check tests as well, standards check, sorry. And also some of this advice carries forward to learner drivers. I've just done a video for learner drivers, which there'll be a link below here for it for your learners, etc. We're currently experiencing huge demands for tests, as you all know. We're all obviously aware of this, etc. With 500,000 tests being cancelled during the pandemic, currently waiting lists for learner tests of November, December in many cases. We're getting tests that are literally being cancelled the day before and on the day. Literally, this is applying for part 2 tests and part 3 tests. I know some of you are in the situation where you are ready, more than ready, to a part 2 test, and unfortunately have had them cancelled for strange reasons. And that a lot of this is because of the new click and self-isolating things. Of course, examiners get a ping, a text message, and tell them that they may or be in contact with somebody, etc., and therefore they're now having to self-isolate for 10 days, etc. And it's been a problem. I know of test centres that have got 4 or 5 examiners in them and currently working with just one. Some of our pupils have been waiting over 18 months for tests, and had 4 or 5 cancelled, etc. So we need to be thinking about what we can do to make sure we're ready for the test. And I thought about doing this alongside the learner one. So I'm just going to try and say some of the things it applies really for those. Now, I started off by saying to learners to make sure they're ready, and the same is for you guys, making sure you're doing it ready. You know, if it's a part 2 test, you know, your trainer will be working with you. You will have followed the guidance of your trainer. You will have done the private practice, hopefully, and you will have filled in the reflective log. The reflective logs are something which I can't stress enough. You know, nobody's looking at your English content or anything like that, but it is important. At every single test, examiners often say things like, have you got a reflective log, or have you got any paperwork, etc., etc. Now, you know, this is one of the things that goes towards it. If you look up and you go, no, the examiner's going to sort of look in a sort of oh, you know, I don't have any. Oh, you know, okay. No, it's not up to requirement. You don't have to have it. But straight away, in examiners' eyes, you sort of, okay, you know, examiners see day in, day out people who are not prepared, people who have not done their homework for this, not done the practice, etc. And so straight away it's making them start thinking, oh, okay, yeah, okay. So it sort of helps. Now, at the same time, you produce this private log and you go, yeah, here's my reflective log, and you show it to them, and their chances are they'll probably open it up and flick through a couple of the pages and just give it to you back, right? Because when you do show it to them, they're just a little bit like rabbit in the headlights, like, okay, but what you have done is, in a sense, you're there, well, this is different. So already you're setting a tone, you're setting a pace that an examiner is thinking, oh, great, you know. Also, it does help that the fact that, you know, the reflective log is from First Driving, DTE-Elite, because, you know, we are well known by nearly all of the examiners. I am, you know, there's very few that don't know me, and they know what I've been trying to do in the industry. So it's going to help. Other things, you know, make sure you've kept everything, make your own private practice. So every time you drive, you need to be able to drive without even thinking about it, really. So you drive to the routines, every drive is good, that you're keeping to speed limits. Take yourself off into the unknown, so you drive along roads you don't know as well, so you can do it. You know, make sure you're fully confident so that whatever happens on that day, you're going to be able to deal with it, you know. Learners often want to be taught test routes, you see, and, you know, as we say, you can't do that, because in reality test routes can change. There could be 30 in a test centre. They can be done clockwise or anti-clockwise. As I said, even on the day they could change and they could be given something else. Your learner needs to be at the point where literally suddenly something happens, a bus stops in front of them, a car breaks down or something, and they need to be at the stage where, yeah, I can deal with that. And you too, you need to be able to deal with it confidently, smoothly, and professionally. You know, In your part 2 test, in particular, the examiner is looking for that smooth, confident drive. He wants to see a confident, smooth drive because he wants to see what you are going to be teaching your learners. And again, that applies to part 2. In part 3, much the same. They're going to be looking for you to be dealing with things through, smoothly. So when you're doing your tuition, a pupil does something, it's not going to phase you. You're going to be able to think on your foot, think on your feet, and think, what can I do now? And then plan a mini section on how to deal with that there. You have all the training. Things like that. Now, much of this is about the actual test as well. Make sure you know when the test is. Read the email, ensure you know when the email is. Send it to your instructor as well if necessary, so you know exactly what time and when it is. Make sure you know where the test centre is. Part 2, probably you'll be using your own vehicle, as it says in the training guides earlier. However, you may, with private arrangement, be using your instructor's car. If it is your own vehicle, make sure it's got fuel, make sure there's no service lights coming on, etc. Make sure it's running properly. You don't want to be worrying about your own car. Give it a clean, inside and out. Again, it's that thing. If an examiner gets into a car and it is dirty, or something looks odd about it, remember what they're thinking. They're professional. They get in and they see it and they're thinking, okay, you can almost see them raise an eyebrow, look at you as if to think, really? Is this the sort of person that we want teaching learners, etc.? And that's what goes through their mind. Is this the sort of person? Are they prepared? Are they ready? Make sure you know when your test is. As I said, make sure you turn up on time for your test, slightly early, not more than 10 minutes, etc. But make sure you know where it is. Make sure you know where the test centre is. Go up there, go and have a look in the test centre waiting room. Make sure you know exactly where you're going to be sitting. Make sure you know where the toilets are, because you will probably want to visit the bathroom before your test. Make sure you know all these things, etc. I often say to learners, I say it to you, if you're a smoker, grab yourself a cigarette outside the test, away from the test centre before you get there. Park up 2 minutes round the corner. Stop, get out your vehicle, well away from your vehicle. Again, you do not want a car smelling of cigarette smoke. Okay, I know many examiners, they smell cigarette smoke and they're like, okay. Again, remembering on that scale, the examiner, you are moving down a little bit each time you get these things. I haven't got a reflective lot. Okay, they're a little bit late for their test. Okay, it just doesn't help. Again, the examiner's making an opinion on that. And arrive at that test centre in time, park in the proper place where you're meant to park. Dress sensibly, comfortably. Now, nobody's expecting you to wear a 3-piece suit, even a shirt and a tie, but I see people turn up for tests in shorts, flip-flops, the black string vests, the ones I call the wife beater vests, etc., etc. Try and look professional. Put a pair of trousers on, guys. Ladies, obviously, dresses, trouser suits, or whatever, but just look professional, etc. You've got to be thinking. Now, I know there's many trainers out there that will tell you it doesn't matter what you wear. And again, if you do a good drive, you could be wearing a pair of swimming trunks and you will pass. But you've got to remember, it's how the examiner thinks. Now, I think exactly the same. I've spent many times with examiners, talking to them, off the record, on the record, etc. Had a few drinks with some of them in places, etc. They're thinking this. Somebody turns up, they're smart, car's clean, they've turned up on time, they've got the record thing. Okay, off you go on the drive. The person makes that first fault. In the examiner's eyes, it's like, oh, that was unlucky. Okay, it might just go down as a fault with no consequence, doesn't it? Pupil turns up smelling of smoke, a little bit late, not got a record card, etc., etc., etc. And they're thinking, okay. And that first fault, it is so much easier for the examiner to go, tick, and it's gone. It's much easier for them because already in their mind they're there. Now I know it shouldn't go on, but it does, and they are human just like us, etc. So dress sensibly, no flip-flops, please. I always remember a trainee turning up for a part 2 session with me once wearing flip-flops. And of course I looked and said, are those the only shoes you got? And they said to me, I did wonder this morning what I should wear because I was reading the highway code about wearing sensible footwear. So I wasn't sure whether flip-flops would be suitable. So I said to them, so you brought another pair of shoes just in case? No, they'd driven 30 miles to me for this part 2 training session. I wouldn't undertake the lesson in flip-flops, you see. And I just thought, what went on in that person's mind when they were thinking maybe it's not suitable? To me, I'd have at least thought that let me put a pair of shoes in the car just in case. What do I know? You know, make sure you have all your paperwork with you. Make sure you have your driver's license. Make sure you got your appointment email or letter printed off if necessary. Any previous past certificates taken along, etc., etc. You probably won't be asked for them, but make sure you've got them. Make sure you've got them at least the day before. Absolutely the day before. Make sure they're there. So on the morning at breakfast, they're on the table, they're there. Okay. Take some water along with you as well. Okay. Okay, you won't be able to necessarily sip your water when you're driving, but certainly for the part 3 test, don't have any questions, you know, sip water. Part 3 is a lot of talking. You will need to sip water. What else can we say there? There will be a test centre. There will be a toilet at the test centre which you can use before your test. This is a test where the examiner is also very much thinking, as I said just now, is this person the sort of person we want teaching pupils? Examiners see every day instructors in test centres that are scruffy, rude, smelly, all sorts of things, etc. They see their pupils failing tests time and time again for the same things. The examiners can't say anything. They'd love to look up some of them and say, will you go off and sort yourself out, etc. But they can't. They're not allowed to. But this is their point where they can at least sort of look and think there. So a good drive will get a pass, a bad drive will get a fail no matter what. But it goes on in their thinking. And I do it myself at a mock test. Sometimes I've turned up. I remember walking across to do a mock test with somebody. They turned up late. This was for a part 3 test. First thing is they turned up late. Eventually turned up and they've come across the car park and they literally are in flip-flops, the tiniest pair of shorts and a tiny little string vest. And they're sitting next to a pupil and you can see the body language of the pupil. You know, and I did question them afterwards and they said, well, that's how I feel comfortable. Modern cars, we have air conditioning, you know, etc. I mean, you know, my personal choice, I always wore my trousers, a shirt and a tie. I'm not expecting people to wear ties, etc. necessarily, unless of course you're comfortable. For years, I always wore my tie. There would be a time when I wouldn't have been doing this video without a tie on. But it's what you're comfortable with and what you're looking professional. Think, how do you think a driving instructor should look? Okay, that's all for this one there. Just a bit of hope. I hope there's a few pointers in there, etc., etc. Oh, one little PS. If you're unfortunate enough to fail any of these tests, examiners will often give you a debrief, and they will often say something like, unfortunately you failed this time, blah, 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 blah. We recommend you get the services of a audit trainer. This doesn't mean you leave your current trainer or leave your current school and go out and get an audit trainer. Some of our trainers are audit anyway, etc., etc. There is no compulsion with the or legal requirement for a trainer to be audit. However, the DVSA have been promoting audit now for some time, as they have been, and rightfully so, because all trainers are working towards audit, or should be, even if they're not audit, etc. But it is still that the examiner has to say, right, he has to look up and say this. So don't be surprised at that. Some of our trainers are audit, some of them are not, etc. Once upon a time, the school could have been audit registered, but a few years ago they changed the way it worked, and it was down to individual instructors, and they massively raised the rate of the cost for an audit trainer to actually qualify, etc. So don't worry about it. If they do say it, just come back to your trainer anyway. A first driver, a DTE trainer are all either working towards audit, have been doing it for many, many years, or are already audit, etc., etc. So don't you worry on that one there. It's just something which the examiners legally or are encouraged to say, because it comes back on them, etc. They can't just look up and say, we need you to go get some more training. They're going to say, go get more training, because they know that there's a huge amount of trainers out there who are not very good. Okay, and they know that time and time again, pupils come, instructor trainees come up for testing who've had very, very poor quality training, but it's certainly not from our organisation, of which the DVSA know all about. Okay, that is the end then. Speak to you all soon, and good luck with your tests.